have the legacy motor manufacturers been led into a trap? EVs will just be cast aside. There are more and more fires, there's more and more disasters, there's more and more firemen getting injured, there's more and more people getting trapped in vehicles. As the news is coming out, I believe so. I believe they've fallen for a ploy, hook, line and sinker, and I think our government and the EU with the ZEV mandates have just led them blindfolded. They're like sirens dragging the legacy motor manufacturers onto the rocks. They've made it impossible for them to sell enough cars, and in my view the Chinese have made theirs cheap. They've flooded the market, their vehicles are subsidised, and the legacy guys have tried to compete by discounting, and that's the worst thing they could have done, because they're not even making profits to either invest or to pay the ZEV mandate fines. Now when you think about it, all these claims from the Climate Intelligence Unit and all the other people that, you know, Andy Pandy, that no fines were paid last year because they all met the criteria. They didn't. They just didn't. They had to buy carbon credits, and there's a non-disclosure agreement, so nobody says anything about it. So it just looks like they've hit the target. But I'm just going to go through a couple of things and then point out the absolute idiocy of the ZEV mandate and the EV zealots claiming that EVs are selling and that they're going to hit the target. The Climate Intelligence Unit said, what was the words? They hit the target in 2024, and it looks like they're going to hit the target in 2025. Not proving too difficult so far. Just look at all the pre-reg vehicles. There's a couple of other things. In fact, let me just quickly go through it if I can find it. I was looking for one particular tweet, but I just saw a few of them. And you know, the Climate Intelligence Unit, has there ever been a worse name for any unit whatsoever? So this took the industry above the 22% target, meaning no fines will need to be paid. As the DFT have said, we're confident the whole market has complied with last year's 22% target and that no car manufacturers will need to pay fines. April the 16th, November the 11th, 2024, electric car prices slashed by 1/3 to meet net zero sales targets. Good. This is the ZEV mandate in action. Manufacturers are discounting their EVs as they compete for sales to hit their targets. Prices coming down and sales going up. Good. He thinks it's good that the legacy manufacturers aren't making any money and they're shedding jobs right, left and centre. I hope, now I never hope this, honestly, I've seen so many people in car sales lose their jobs. And it's a horrible thing to lose your job, but this is ridiculous. Good. He's hoping for bad times for the car industry so that EVs will sell, because they only sell on price. They don't sell because people want them. Don't kid yourself, they do, because they don't. They sell because of tax benefits, that's it. And because they're cheap, that's it. Prices coming down and sales going up. December the 23rd, 2024. Coverage today of our analysis finding that far from struggling to meet the 22% ZEV mandate targets for 2024, the car industry is set to hit it. Why? Because credits can be earned by selling EVs and selling a lot of low CO2 petrol and diesel cars. So why can't they sell a lot of EVs? Why can't they sell a lot of EVs and hit the target on its own? Because they're not EVs. Low CO2 petrol and diesel cars, they're not EVs. So, what a stupid claim. What an idiotic statement. January the 10th. That's it from me, other than a reminder that EV sales are rising in line with the targets set out in the government's ZEV mandate. Suggestions that the car industry are struggling, that the targets are too onerous and the demand isn't there are inaccurate. Well, no, Colin, they're very accurate. It's you that's not. January the 10th, great to see the Times reporting on the fact that credits to hit the ZEV mandate can be earned by selling EVs and selling large numbers of low CO2 emitting ICE cars, which is why, far from struggling with the mandate in 2024, the car industry as a whole hit its targets. Well, it didn't. Suzuki didn't sell one EV and they didn't get fined. So how did they do that? March 5th, and the SMMT are predicting the industry will hit 23.7%. So far from struggling to meet its ZEV mandate targets, the industry is on course to exceed them. What a f***ing moron. Nissan strategy chief says 100% EV remains the ultimate goal, but customers will decide the future. He's basically saying their goal means nothing. Battle plans never survive contact with the enemy. In this case, the enemy is the customer. They'll decide the future. Nissan are planning 100% EV, but the enemy, the customer, will decide. The customer will decide when it comes to future powertrains, says Nissan product planner. Christopher Amblard says choice between powertrains remains key for now. Comments come as Nissan prepares to launch its third generation Leaf. This article is by Jack Williams and it was October the 14th, 2025. Nissan strategy chief says that decisions over future powertrains will be decided by the customer. Christopher Amblard, Nissan Europe's product strategy and planner, believes the ultimate goal remains getting to 100% EV, but says that for now choice remains key, because they're not 100% EV, are they? The former Toyota man added that Nissan would continue to carry out its EV offensive, with 4 new electric models set to be introduced in the next year. However, with some consumers still reticent to take the jump into fully electric motoring, Amblard admitted work also has to go into reducing emissions on the brand's hybrid models. The comments come as Nissan prepares to launch its third generation Leaf, the model which kick-started mass-market EVs when it went on sale in 2011. Speaking at the latest Cars International launch, Amblard told the PA News agency, "What we've also said is that customers will decide." Well, he's got that across in this article numerous times now, hasn't he? So yeah, we get it. As an OEM, we propose both solutions with hybrid and electric powertrains. We are introducing 4 EVs with a new Micra. The Micra looks beautiful. Leaf, not so much. And then an electric Duke and an A-segment city car next year. Now the Duke's been a great seller. I wouldn't say it's a particularly great car, but it's been a great seller. It's a bit, quite good looking. The EV offensive is continuing because we believe the ultimate goal is to be 100% EV. Do you think this article has been written by AI at all with a load of keywords? The question is, how do we transition to that? Period. He added, therefore, we are continuing to invest in our e-power hybrid powertrains, so he knows the writing's on the wall for EVs. But we will continue to lower the figures with emissions and so on, as they still emit CO2. Like Colin says, you have to sell a large amount of small-engined petrol and diesels. The UK government has currently got a target of banning the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles by 2035, with only electric and hydrogen fuel cell models to be sold beyond that point. Nissan will be hoping that its new wave of electric models will be enough to help it claim a larger share of the EV market, but what it will actually be doing is they'll be trying to sell hybrids that they actually make money on, and they'll sell the minimum amount of EVs, because if they sell more than the minimum amount of EVs, they'll lose more money. Speaking at Car Dealer Live earlier this year, the brand's former UK boss, Dr. Andy Palmer, said Nissan had seeded the initial boost, which came from the launch of their first generation Leaf. The Leaf was a pretty awful car, to be honest. When you look through past MOTs, and even Andy's Nissan Leaf, have a look at his MOTs, they are shocking. He said it is extraordinary that Nissan finds itself in such bad shape, having taken leadership of EV. But if you were to ask my Japanese colleagues, they'd say that is the history of Nissan. I don't think they would, Andy. Nissan has invented over and over again in the past. Did you know Nissan invented the hybrid? But then it ceded that technology to Toyota. It was one of the first manufacturers to introduce autonomous driving, but it ceded that technology to most of the Chinese manufacturers. Well, when people invent things, other people, industrial espionage, they spend a fortune inventing it and making it and producing it, and then somebody just nicks their idea down the line and makes it themselves. It largely invented the mass production EV, but it ceded that to everyone else. So in many respects, what you find is that Nissan is an intellectual company which is very good at developing stuff, but generally speaking, it's impatient and not committed to the long term. Or perhaps it sees that there's no future in it, and it lets other people do it. And then it's all set up to jump on the bandwagon if it does succeed. I think they're clever. The reason that Nissan is no longer leading in EVs is nothing to do with the distractions around former CEO Carlos Ghosn. Well, you know, somebody being smuggled out of the country in a suitcase. You have to wonder why. They'd already started departing EVs under Ghosn's leadership. The new Nissan Leaf will go on sale here in the UK in February next year, with prices expected to start at around £33,000. Too dear. There's some real good Citroens now on the market, about 22 grand. 33 grand's too dear. They'll be having to discount it straight away before applying the anticipated £3,750 discount from the government's electric car grant. You know, all this bull about the car manufacturers hitting the targets, and it looks like they're going to exceed them this year. In 2028, if they've not done the targets, because they can also carry it forward. They can carry, it's like having an overdraft. It's an EV carbon deficit overdraft. So they can carry it forward, but at the end of 2028, they're going to have to make good. So all these claims so far, there's nothing to substantiate it. It's just rubbish. And all it is propaganda to make people think they are actually hitting the targets. And yeah, perhaps I should get on board. Everybody else is buying one. Perhaps I should. But no, it's not true. This next headline, if this is true, I think Philip Northard, and Philip does watch this. Hello Philip, thank you. Philip Northard and Cox Automotive estimated that the manufacturers were going to fall short of their ZEV mandate by, I think it was 345,000 cars. Nissan pools carbon emissions with the electric vehicle maker BYD to avoid EU penalties. Japanese car makers deal with Chinese rival, part of EU-sanctioned offsetting scheme to help head off 13 billion in fines. 13 billion. Let that sink in. This story is Lisa O'Carroll, Monday the 27th of October. The Japanese car maker Nissan is to team up with its Chinese electric vehicle rival BYD in an attempt to offset their carbon emissions and avoid EU penalties for 2025, it has confirmed. Getting back to my point before, they've fallen headfirst into a trap. The fine per EV you fall short of your target is £12,000. The Chinese have been pumping EVs out. Like when I went to work for a Ford dealer and I went to the first meeting and they budgeted to lose £30 on each Fiesta they sold. I'd never lost money on a car before. Certainly not new. Why would you sell something to lose money? But no, you get an overrider bonus, a volume bonus. So if you hit your target, you get, say, 2% back. So they were working for, well, they weren't working for the full 2%, but that's what their budget was. They had to hit the target and get this volume bonus. And I said, well, why not forget about the volume bonus, the overrider? Why not treat that as a bonus? But you see, it's another way of doing people out of money, because when they get the bonus, the salesmen aren't paid on that money. So I suppose they probably make 10% commission off the salesman, another 10% that the sales manager gets, and then probably 10% that the general manager gets. So they save quite a bit of money, really, depending on how they put it in their accounts. So now the situation is the Chinese manufacturers have gone into it, flooded the market, sold a load of electric vehicles, stopped the legacy manufacturers selling vehicles because they've undercut them. The legacy manufacturers, because the Chinese have stopped them selling enough cars to hit the ZEV mandate target, have got to buy carbon credits off the people who've stopped them hitting the targets. And idiots on here that say that they've hit the targets, good, prices are coming down. They've reduced the prices. They'd have been better off saying no. They'd have been better off saying, no, we're not selling EVs. We're going to continue selling petrols and diesels, and then just buy the credits off the Chinese. Let them blow their brains out selling EVs and starting the market, increasing the market with their vehicles. Do it. Go ahead, be my guest. You sell EVs. You sell them. You blow your brains out selling EVs. We'll continue to sell petrol and diesels. We'll hold firm against the incompetent EU ZEV mandate organisers and the incompetent British government that are forcing them to do this target. Hold firm. No, we're not selling them. No. And just buy credits. Buy them off. Tesla make a fortune selling carbon credits. How do you think they make a fortune selling carbon credits if everybody's hitting the targets? It's just a con. It's just more EV myth information. It's just more rubbish spouted by these EV people. It's not rubbish and it's not myth information. It's barefaced lies. There's no covering it up. It's barefaced lies. Now, I saw one of the things I learned from 2.5 Men. Plausible deniability. Okay? So if you're on the fringes of something, you can have plausible deniability. Is I was scratching me out, Charlie, master.
Read between the lines. You're giving the finger, but you've got plausible deniability.
Cool, like DGI.
Exactly.
I'll try and find it and I'll cut it in. Plausible deniability. So stupid people can say things like the law. Ignorance is no defence when it's on. If you didn't know, unless you're... No, I'm not even going to get into that. It's not a religious channel. It's just EVs. Oh, actually, it is a religious channel because it's the EV people are like a cult. It's like a religion. If you're not part of their religion, you're a Philistine. That's what they'd have been better off doing. Because now, I think we're at a point where there's not much chance of turning back. I still don't think EVs will succeed. I still think there's a better alternative in the pipeline coming up. And once that's done, EVs will just be cast aside. There are more and more fires, there's more and more disasters, there's more and more firemen getting injured, there's more and more people getting trapped in vehicles as the news is coming out. So, just to recap, the Japanese car maker Nissan is to team up with its Chinese electric vehicle rival BYD in an attempt to offset their carbon emissions and avoid EU penalties for 2025. It's part of a wider offsetting scheme that the EU has sanctioned for the car industry. It's very good of them. That could help manufacturers of combustion engine cars head off an estimated 13 billion in fines. Nissan said in a statement, Nissan has formed a pool with BYD for its CO2 fleet emissions in Europe for the 2025 calendar year. The scope of the agreement covers passenger vehicles within EU markets and will contribute to Nissan's commitment towards zero emissions in a sustainable way, while continuing to support the EU's 2050 decarbonisation target. So when they say in a sustainable way, they're buying carbon credits because it's cheaper than selling EVs. As I say, think about it. They can't support the EU's 2050 decarbonisation target by making EVs and selling them. It's better for them not to sell them and to buy credits. What sort of completely messed up market is that to be forced into? So the Chinese have mucked away all these EVs and now they're going to get basically a volume overrider bonus and a lot more than you would get if you hit your sales targets and got your 2% off the manufacturers or whatever it was at the time. It's completely ridiculous. It added that it had entered into an agreement to ensure the business is better able to comply with EU regulations and continue the transition towards our own goal of zero emissions. Perhaps Nissan are doing the same as Andy accused them of. They're letting everybody else cock up first and then join in. Clever strategy, I think. Chinese exports of EVs to the EU are already posing an existential crisis to the European car industry, but are now, like Tesla, helping traditional car firms meet their decarbonisation targets, courtesy of an EU regulation that in effect allows car firms to pool emissions. The EU has already extended the period for compliance with emission rules from 1 year to 3 years. Fueling fears this will further delay the already slow take-up of EVs in the EU, particularly in southern Europe, but also in key states such as France and Germany. Fredrik Eklund, responsible for carbon credits trading at the Chinese-owned Swedish brand Polestar, which only makes electric vehicles, said it risks delaying the transition from legacy cars to EVs. We are already seeing car manufacturers pushing at the 2027 expiry date. From our point of view, and from the point of view of society, we really don't want to delay this. Polestar, they're just self-registering cars like there's no tomorrow. Under the rules, car manufacturers have to meet emissions targets of 93.6 grams of CO2 per kilometre. But under the car pooling arrangement, car manufacturers can pay electric car companies to use their zero emissions record to average out pollution from sales of their combustion engine cars to avoid fines. The industry in the past has said the 2025 emissions targets could have led to as much as 15 billion, 13.6 1.03 billion in fines. The latest carpooling agreement confirmed by Nissan mirrors that of other companies who have teamed up with other big name electric car brands, including Tesla and Polestar. Polestar has a pooling arrangement with Mercedes-Benz, Volvo and Smart Cars, while Tesla's zero emissions record is being mopped up by Toyota, Ford, Mazda, Alfa Romeo and Suzuki. As I say, Suzuki, they didn't sell one EV last year, so how did they hit the target? The price car companies are paying EV firms to offset their emissions remains confidential. But in January, it was reported that carbon credit sales accounted for almost 3% of Tesla's $72 billion, £54 billion total revenue in the first 9 months of last year. So just over 1.6 billion. So they're discounting them to less than the cost to build, and they're paying 1.6 billion. Well, more than that, that's just Tesla. The car industry is now fighting for a softening of the EU's 2035 target for banning the sale of new combustion engine cars, arguing that the public is still not prepared to make the switch in sufficient numbers, citing lack of infrastructure in southern and central Europe as part of the problem. They've gone head first, absolutely head first, into a trap. And all the lies, instead of telling the truth, coming clean, saying what was happening, all the lies that are put out by all these EV shills, they've just got themselves deeper in. When you lie, lies get bigger and bigger till you have to kill somebody. That's what they say. Ridiculous. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.